After months of rumors, a lead up to a visually questionable trailer which was revealed in October 2021, the GTA Trilogy Remastered has released. And it's, as I'm writing this, sitting at a Metacritic user score of 0.5 out of 10. Not that one should ever purely judge a game's quality due to aggregate review scores, they are simply too prone to manipulation and review bombing. But it's a warning sign that this collection is messed up. We are left in a spot where there is no longer a truly definitive version of these games publicly available on PC. GTA 3 is a 20-year-old game. GTA Vice City is a 19-year-old game. San Andreas is a 17-year-old game. Making games is a really hard thing to do. I've never made one, and I can tell you, it's really, really hard. I'm sure you've seen some clips, so I don't need to fixate on the quality of craftsmanship featured in this collection. As hilarious as the janky rain effect is, or how it seems like the people remastering this were not in on any of the jokes you see on every store sign in these games, I feel there is a more relevant problem with this collection. I think every fan of the GTA series would have loved a remaster of this game that truly honored the historical significance of GTA as both a real game changer and a pop culture talking point. For a bit of context, GTA established a lot of important trends that games would still call back to today. The refreshing open world and that world's sandbox nature were huge talking points in 2001. The game had so many imitators that first-party Sony mascot platformers became edgy GTA clones. The game was as influential as it was controversial, which says a lot because lawyers made careers out of trying to put a stop to these games. Perhaps out of any series that really hit its stride on the PS2, GTA left the biggest impact on our culture, which is why the state of these games is a real shame. Part 1. The issue. One problem that arises anytime you remake something is how do you honor the original while still justifying its existence by setting it apart. Too samey and it's boring, too different and it betrays the memory of that revered thing. Whether it be your favorite meal or your favorite video game, chasing that perfect sweet spot may be impossible because our expectations already exist. We believe our memories are clear even though they oftentimes aren't. The original 3D GTA Trilogy, despite being so good, is really, really janky.
The biggest thing
for most people is the graphics. GTA is no MGS2, Wind Waker, or Resident Evil 4, but that's not entirely fair. Can't really blame them for the way their big ambitious game looks compared to more focused titles. Besides, it's early era Rockstar up against peak era Konami and Capcom. That said, at least when I look at the old models, there is an excuse that, hey, this was 2002. Most games looked like this. I even think the flipper hands were kind of funny. Now, the definitive edition looks like one of those Unreal Engine renders of Kirby or Link that people post online back in the Wii days, where something about the art style is like oil hitting water. The world has too much fidelity in some areas, but not others, and characters are rendered in a way that I think is trying to invoke the promotional art, but I feel like the original in-game graphics were obviously trending towards realism. My mind filled in the gaps at the time to make those older games look more natural. Now, they have this look of plastic, and it's all you can see are these rubber mask-looking faces staring at each other. I don't want to be around anymore. The shooting in the original GTA games are also rough. By default, you had to hold a bumper and press circle or B to shoot. It's not really elegant when you're trying to aim with the right stick, and it's not very modern. Luckily, the driving still feels pretty good to this day, and the open world has some of its magic thanks to some great acting and attention to detail in the world's construction. Mission structure is sometimes hard to go back to, because something weird can happen and oops, you failed the mission, time to restart, get a big health coverage fine, all your weapons are confiscated, and it can really kill the pacing. So with those issues noted, in my mind there are two results that can be seen as good outcomes when it comes to remaking any game. First, the developer creates a remaster that completely overwrites the original in terms of relevance. In this scenario, the remaster improves everything that needed to be fixed or modernized, so a better resolution, a cleaner image, better control options, accessibility options, quality of life features that don't invalidate the original vision. On paper, this definitive edition trilogy that was released has all of this. Some of these changes are objectively better control methods, like a weapon wheel or different shooting controls, but it loses the spirit and the feeling of the original world, which was what brought us all there in the first place. We were playing these games for the world. It's called open world for a reason. The second good scenario is that the devs create a game that goes in its own direction. It becomes its own beast. Maybe it's not what everyone expects or wants, but some people like it. It's more modernized, and for many people that's great. In this scenario, we at least have the ability to choose between an old version and a new version. I kind of see this as the way the Pokemon games or the Resident Evil games were remade. For example, Resident Evil 2 Remake is not a total replacement of Resident Evil 2. If you only played Resident Evil 2 Remake, you didn't play the original Resident Evil 2. They're two separate, different games, even though the setting and story and characters are similar. They're just too different to be mistaken for each other.
Good shot, kid. I think you got him.
Part 2. The worst of both worlds. Where these two scenarios intersect, we have a problem. Now we're left with the worst of both worlds. We have many different versions that aren't definitively better than any of the others. In fact, we are left with fewer legal options than ever before to experience these games as they were created. The original Steam versions of these games were delisted. So, as a PC player, you have two options. Buy this funky remaster or download the game some other way. Maybe emulate it. There's the option to go to the flea market and find a PS2 copy, or maybe download the older versions released on PS4 or Xbox. But for some time now, the PC version was the best version available because it was so easy to mod. Even straight from Steam, these versions you could once buy were not ideal and not very well supported by Rockstar. These versions lacked modern resolutions, had poor controller support, and busted menus, among other bugs. Compare it to the way Valve treats its beloved classics on Steam. You can buy Half-Life 1 for like a handful of pennies and it runs great. And you can even buy a pretty awesome remake of the original made by fans. You can even look at 343 Studios with their Master Chief Collection. Master Chief Collection has remakes of Halo 1 and 2 that you can seamlessly switch between the original and the upgraded version with the press of a button, and it looks great. But if you want to have that original feel and look of the graphics, it's there for you. Now, luckily, the GTA games do have a devoted fan community that could drag these nearly 2-decade-old juegos into the future and have been keeping these games alive despite the laws and the chase for new fancy technologies attempts to leave these games in the dust. I'm fortunate enough to own PC copies of the original version of the trilogy, and within minutes, I installed some fan-made mods that had these games looking as pure as they ever could. Usually when I mod a game, I just want fixes, controller support, better resolution, and a HUD that doesn't look like garbage. I just want things cleaned up. That's what I tell my barber. Nothing fancy, I'm not that confident. I've been having an absolute blast playing GTA 3. Back in the aughts, I played a lot of San Andreas and Vice City, but never really spent that much time with 3. So I'm eager to play through that. I've been having a lot of fun just with its really simple structure. It's just like a good time, just like a goofy time. The conclusion. Songs have been removed and patched out of these games as time has crept forward due to expiring licenses. Given how important the radio is to defining Vice City and San Andreas' place in time, it's really a shame that these songs were removed. For some people, these may have even bestowed a greater appreciation for the music in the era. It may seem like a small point, but one of these songs could have been a key nostalgic anchor for someone revisiting these games. and they can just patch that out of the game. It can just, part of the game can just be removed for legal reasons, which are understandable, but it's really a shame. Even if Rockstar put an absolute A-team on this remaster, I doubt some aspects of it would truly be complete due to some record label wanting a cut. Re-upping the license is probably just a bad business idea. You really have to hand it to the fans for the love, time, and support they have poured into the game to keep these old PC ports hydrated. As time marches on, it seems like a truly definitive version of these games from this era may be an impossibility. Imagine if the most modern way to play the Ocarina of Time legally was terrible. Oh no. Well, imagine if the most modernized way to experience Warcraft 3 was terrible. That happened, didn't it? Imagine if Star Wars was... Imagine it. Silent Hill. Consider subscribing to my channel and liking and commenting on this video. Crash into like button like this remaster crashed on people's PC. Alright. Bye.